Thank you for coming, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Attorney General Eric Schneiderman, and as many of you know, in July of last year, Governor Cuomo issued an executive order that appointed my office as Special Prosecutor in cases where a police officer causes the death of an unarmed civilian, and in cases where there is a significant question as to whether or not the civilian was armed. In these cases, my office effectively takes the place of the local district attorney investigating and, where warranted, prosecuting those cases. Since the executive order took effect, we have acted as special prosecutor in 6 different matters. In 2 of those cases, Raynette Turner and Joseph Seguin, where we did not believe the evidence warranted criminal charges, we issued thorough reports of our investigations in keeping with our commitment to transparency in the criminal justice process. In our report about the death of Raynette Turner, we urged the legislature to undertake several reforms to the way arrestees are processed and arraignment is handled, and I'm pleased to say that in this year's session, some of our reforms did, in fact, pass the legislature. Investigations are ongoing in the 3 other cases, and we're here today to announce the results of an investigation into an incident that took place in Brooklyn in the early hours of July 4th. On July 4th of this year, after exiting his vehicle, Delrawn Small approached the vehicle of Wayne Isaacs on Atlantic Avenue in East New York. Shortly thereafter, Mr. Isaacs, an off-duty police officer, shot and killed Mr. Small. That morning, acting pursuant to my authority as Special Prosecutor, my office immediately launched an investigation into the case. We've conducted a thorough investigation, and as I've said time and again, we follow the facts wherever they lead. In this instance, the evidence warranted a presentation to a grand jury, and yesterday, the grand jury voted and returned an indictment against Mr. Isaacs on charges of murder in the second degree and manslaughter in the first degree. Pursuant to that indictment, Mr. Isaacs was taken into custody. He was arraigned in Brooklyn Supreme Court this morning. His bail was set at $500,000, and one of his family members is required to personally sign the bond. He has surrendered his passport and firearms and will be required to wear an ankle bracelet to monitor his whereabouts at all times. His travel will be restricted to New York City pending the resolution of this proceeding. My office takes the prosecution of this matter very seriously and intends to prove the alleged charges against Mr. Isaacs beyond a reasonable doubt in a court of law. Of course, in our system, Mr. Isaacs is innocent until proven guilty, but we are proceeding. The court has set a schedule for motions, and we're due back in court on November 22nd. I want to thank the extraordinary career prosecutors in my Special Investigations and Prosecutions Unit, led by my Executive Deputy Attorney General Alvin Bragg, and our fine team of investigators led by Chief Investigator Dominic Zarella. I also want to thank the NYPD's Force Team, which performed excellent and essential work throughout this investigation, and the Brooklyn District Attorney's Office for their courtesy and assistance. As many of you know, New York has some of the strictest grand jury secrecy laws in the country, which severely restricts what I can say at this juncture. But with that in mind, I will now take a few questions.
If you name and outlet, please.
Hi, Shari Logan, New York Post. There are critics, sir, that say that it's a coincidence that Mr. Isaacs, who's African American, is the first person to be affected by this executive order, to be convicted under it. What do you say to those critics?
We follow the facts wherever they lead, and the evidence is what it is, and it speaks for itself.
I'm wondering if you could describe the makeup of the grand jury and how long they deliberated before returning an indictment.
We don't get into details about the grand jury. I can say they did not deliberate very long.
Any other questions?
Would the trial take place here in Brooklyn, or could it be shipped out?
As it's currently scheduled for Brooklyn, we don't, and I assume it's going to be taking place in Brooklyn. We're awaiting the motions of the defense to see what they ask for.
Back.
NJ Burke from Channel 7, sir. Can you just take a moment and describe the scenario under which the shooting took place, and just perhaps perhaps a bit more detail as your investigators have discovered to the?
Well, without getting into anything that was grand jury evidence, it's been highly publicized that, and there was a video that was widely distributed showing Mr. Small approaching Mr. Isaac's car and then falling back and falling to the ground. So the video evidence has already been out there, and beyond that, I really don't want to comment anymore on what was presented to the grand jury.
But the duration, sir, if I may follow up, the time between when he approaches the car and when the shot is fired, does that figure into the case?
That's obviously an important fact, and this video speaks for itself.
Anything else? Yes.
What's your response, I'm Joe Stefanski, New York Daily News, what's your response to the defense's line that, the act of walking to the car itself was an aggressive act, and it wasn't going there to, like, take salutations or whatnot?
Well, that was an argument that was made to the court and rejected by the court, at least to the extent the judge granted our request for the bond and the monitoring bracelet. So it was an argument that was made and was rejected.
One more?
The defense also presented that it's visible on the tape that the officer was in fact punched. I'm wondering if you also believe that that's the case, or is there a discrepancy between what you see and what they see?
I think everyone of you has probably seen this videotape, and you're free to draw your own conclusions. It all happened pretty quickly.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you.